My wife is dying and you make jokes about scabies.
Yo, how would you feel about playing Skyrim, except it's educational, historically accurate 15th century Czechoslovakia, complete with buxom wenches, sleeping on benches, and drawbridge extensions? Welcome to my 2018 pick for Best Edutainment Software, Come Deliverance. I feel like society has really gotten away from quality educational games. My name is Mothy, Jimothy for long, and before the sequel comes out next month, I wanted to take us on a journey together through Come Deliverance 1 to get us all refreshed on the plot, while I cheese the ever-living pizzle out of a playthrough and give a retrospective on everything that made this game simultaneously excellent and awful. Come Deliverance is a 2018 action RPG from Czech developer Warhorse Studios. This is the first game from Warhorse, but its lead writer, Daniel Vavra, was the lead writer on Mafia and Mafia 2 before this. They don't typically go into development process in these videos, but it's easy to feel good for these guys. Nobody would fund them, so they went to Kickstarter and got done. And I'm glad they did. This game is an example of ambitious and original design that I am 100% here for. I've always personally placed a high value on originality and games that take creative risks, not minding when a game is flawed if it tried something brave and put its heart behind it. KCD is definitely a brave production. It's an action stealth RPG that's also half detective game. It has realistic survival elements, which will turn off a lot of players, and on top of all of that, it strives to be heavily educational. I would call this game's DNA 50% Skyrim, 25% Disco Elysium or Sherlock Holmes, and 25% Outward, another game I adore for its mechanically unpleasant but extremely clever gameplay. I think maybe I just enjoy suffering. Like, my favorite foods are bitter, and my favorite games make me do laundry so NPCs won't hate me. There is so much to like and dislike about Kingdom Come, which I'll cover as we go. For now, I'll set up the plot, which the game reminds us of every time we boot up. The year is 1403. We're in Bohemia, a state within the modern-day Czech Republic. King Charles IV was a great king everyone loved, but when he died, we got stuck with his son Wenceslas IV, who's just a chill guy who doesn't want to rule, and that's causing chaos and aggravation for the nobles. That guy's brother, Sigismund of Hungary, decided he can do better, so he kidnapped Wenceslas and is on the way to Bohemia to pillage the country and attempt to claim rule from him. We'll be playing as Henry, son of the blacksmith Martin, in our silver-rich hometown of Skalitz. And quickly, as we head into the game, I would be so grateful for any interactions on this video if you're enjoying my content. Your engagement helps me to get my work in front of more eyeballs that might enjoy it too. I'm just one dude working alone on the channel, so I do read every single comment personally, and I'm extremely grateful for the clicks. Thank you all. Let's play. First, I was stunned to see my old file logged 125 hours when I began this playthrough. My first Elden Ring run, where I scoured the whole world, was only 118. This is a big game. We begin with a beautiful opening cinematic as a new day dawns on Skalitz. Our dad was a renowned swordsmith back in the day, but now he works out in the boonies repairing axes. Except today. Today he's actually working on a cool sword again for the local liege lord, Sir Radzig Kobyla. We wake up late, chided by mom for brawling at the tavern last night, and for sleeping in because dad wants our help finishing the sword. Our replies to mom's criticisms dictate which 2 free starting stat points we gain. I went with speech and speech to maximize content, but you can farm up any of these stats, so don't stress the starting choice. Mother serves us breakfast and tells us to eat. This game does have survival mechanics. Time doesn't pass during the introduction here in Skalitz, but you do still get hungry and can eventually starve to death, so the actual limit on how much time you can waste here is determined by the food supply. Grab some bandages, some quest item nails, and save your schnapps from our family's trunk. You actually cannot save whenever you want to in Come Deliverance. You have to either sleep in an owned bed or drink one of these schnapps to save the game. I realize it's easy to be scared off by this, but do not be. Autosaves happen commonly enough if you're doing quests, and the need to sleep will naturally checkpoint you as you touch your bed each night. So save your schnapps is mostly for if you're being a filthy degen trying to pull off robberies or assaults that you want to save before, and even then it's plentiful. We will have risen above the need for cash by the mid-game, but every last coin you can scrounge in the early game makes a big difference, so I raided mom's pantry for produce to resell even though the stuff has a terrible weight to price ratio. Go speak to dad and ask him how we can help. Would you believe me if I said it's a series of fetch quests designed to tutorialize several game mechanics? First, our buds Yannick and Yaroslav on guard duty outside Skalitz Castle have the sword's crossguard, just now delivered from Sasau. Then, in town, this skeezy dude Vranik, who gives off high school drug dealer hanging out with the middle schoolers vibes, runs an optional combat tutorial that I take mostly for the stat farming. Y'all, the combat in this game is miserable. I think the most apologetic stance I could offer is that it's not tutorialized well and needs a few hours of farming your stats up before your stats are high enough to allow you to land blows. And if I wasn't trying to be polite, I would call the combat clumsy and terribly unbalanced. What they're going for is realistic swordplay. You're supposed to pay attention to the angle and position of where your opponent holds their weapon and strike from their unguarded side. But they can still move to guard you, so you're supposed to feint one direction as you pull back and switch up to an overhead strike as you swing, and then like chain hits from different directions while also parrying and dodging your opponent and minding your stamina bar. What they don't tell you is that a lot of these strategies won't even work until your stats are high enough for the game to allow them to. This might be acceptable if the game started off all of your opponents with equally shitty stat lines and worse reflexes so that you could train up alongside them. But opponents in KCD don't pull punches, so good luck ever beating a foe if you try to fight them earnestly. Now, I expect quite a few get good comments. I would also be proud of my progress if I spent the 15 hours it takes to understand KCD's combat. But for the rest of us, R1 spam is the way to go. That or just handling everything with your bow, even from melee range. I feel slightly bad for reducing the combat to this, since they clearly had this whole ambitious system in mind, but we can win every encounter by spamming light attacks, which do a quicker stab with your sword rather than a wide slash. Combat is easily the worst part of this game, which is a damning statement to make against an action RPG, but at least we have R1 spam, my beloved, to get us through. After learning combat, I hopped back to town because jumping farms vitality XP. Don't worry, I gave up on this fast because it slows you down, but a crazy man wanting to farm up early vitality points could vault fences back and forth for a few hours to get in shape. Hitting up the town trader, I cashed in my family's vegetables and ended up making 22 bucks. Then I approached the town's mean stupid guy, Kunesh, who owes our dad for several tools he's bought on credit, and collection time is now. Between you and me, you get more value failing to repossess the axe here, because then your friend will give you lockpicks to go steal it, and lockpicks are very strong early on. But I actually beat his ass in a fist fight, which is not easy to do despite my double speech point start. You know how? R1 spam. At the tavern, we and our friends overhear this Deutsch fellow badmouthing our rightful king Wenceslas and standing Sigismund who would seek to conquer Bohemia. Us skalitz boys have too much pride to let that stand, so let's teach Deutsch a lesson by flinging poo on his newly whitewashed house. We only managed to lay on a few duties before we're interrupted by Deutsch's son and his friends for a brawl. In other words, a chance to spam R1 to farm unarmed skill XP. But we gotta stop slinging poo-poo when a girl Johanka warns that the popo are coming, or else we'll get in trouble with the law. Yo thanks, Johanka. We'll repay her kindness later on. And at this point, optimal play of KCD is to spend several real-life hours picking every single weed and flower within the town limits. I wish I was kidding. Seriously, pick the place clean. It's all covered with flowers. If this is paradise, I wish I had a lawnmower. The reasons for this are manifold. We can sell them to traders for money, especially sage, the purple flowers. Sage is worth 3 or 4 times the other stuff. For picking 100 nettles, we get a permanent +2 vitality buff because we're used to handling the poison stings. Then we can grab an herbalism perk that gives us a charisma bonus if we walk around with 3 pounds of flowers in our pockets because it makes us smell nice. And most important, at level 10 herbalism, we start leg day. From now on, every time we bend to pick up a flower, we get 1 point of strength XP, which only gives more incentive for picking more herbs. Don't worry about prioritizing the perk giving better sale price for herbs yet. We'll still easily clear out the trader's gold, which is finite even without that. And while we're talking farming random skills, you can haggle for better prices on every transaction you make with a trader, which gives speech XP. I think you get the same experience for every successful haggle operation, regardless of the amount of money you save. So in theory, you could farm speech up by splitting up your shopping into 100 microtransactions, but that's too annoying even for me. But I am willing to farm alcoholism. Drinking is a skill in this game too, which actually has some positive gameplay effects, so you'll want to be better at it. I'm gonna chase this whiskey with Patron. I want a girl in my lap and a Jaeger bomb. Plus, all the XP we gain leveling our stats and side skills rolls up into main character level, which is why I'll occasionally choke out a wayfarer on the roads. That stealth XP isn't gonna earn itself. One of the traders in town sold me some cobblers and tailor's kits. Maintenance is another skill in KCD, and equipment gets dirty and degrades pretty fast. Your clothes never wear as well the next day, and your hair never falls in quite the same way. These kits let us patch up our broken stuff to keep its stats high. After this, it's back to herbing around skalitz. Clearing a field does not take as long as you'd think, because as your herbalism skill increases, you start to actually clear a larger and larger radius of plants whenever you take a pick action, which paradoxically makes it harder and harder to level herbalism the better you get at it, because you only get XP for doing the pick. It's not based on how many flowers you grab, so if you're wiping a whole yard in one pick, that's XP lost. Once I had pretty much mowed this town bald and farmed all the leg day strength XP that I could, I am reluctantly willing to resume our errands for Dad. I gave the charcoal trader some fistfuls of flowers in exchange for 10 charcoal. And the final thing for Dad is a pitcher of ale from Bianca at the pub. She flirts pretty heavily. Apparently we bone regularly, and it's good enough that she tosses in 5 free savior schnapps for us. I also have the cash to clear out her wine supply, and I grab a book on how to drink good for later, even though I can't actually, read at the moment. Return all of that junk to Dad, and we help him forge not only a sword, but a bond. We would love to travel and see the world like he did, but Dad is trying to make sure we spend our whole life in Skalitz, hidden from the world and safe from any risk, which is kind of abusive thinking in its own way. While we finish up the sword, we get some exposition on the world of 1403 Bohemia. It's clear the writers care a great deal about Czech history, and they do a careful job working naive questions about the world from Henry into dialogues so that we, the player, can't help but learn something. This nice girl Teresa shows up a little later to pick up some nails, and we're graced with medieval ass shot as she bounces off. This is hilarious to me because it's just like brown fabric, but I'm happy for Henry. And before we can even blow the dust off our finished sword, Sir Radzig is here with impeccable timing to come test it out. Our dad was really pushing the deadline, jeez.
Very fine. What say you say, Svan?
True, Sir Radzig. If I'd have had its like back in Nicopolis, things would have worked out differently.
Did you get foreshadowed like I did with this Istvan Toth man? Speaks ominously, wears black, it's classic symbolism. Once they depart, Dad is back to telling us to never adventure anywhere or have any fun. Well, I have bad news, Dad. Adventure has found me.
A messenger? He was in a hurry. What's happened?
Listen to me, Al. Listen carefully. Take the sword, go into the house, and grab anything else important from the trunk. Go to the castle. Hurry!
What about you?
Your mother is in the village. I'll fetch her and we'll follow right behind.
I'll go with you.
No! You'll do what I say right now. Give the sword to Sir Radzig. If anything happens, he'll take care of you. He owes me.
Closing! Move it, people! Come on! We're running out of time! Oh, Henry! Thank God! Get inside, quick! We have to shut the gates! Keep running, people! Come on!
Mind this for me.
Are you mad? You can't go back! Get through the gates!
This game has the best intro. The anger and sadness turned up to 100, but there's no time to dwell on that. We have to run, steal a horse, and get away now. I did an embarrassing number of reps on this section though, because I was trying to find a way to kill one of these horses for its 4-bag noble saddle, the best one in the game actually. I just gotta leave this place with a big bag. The problem is, horses are kind of sturdy, and I'm so bad with a sword I can't bring one down fast enough to loot its saddle before it flees. I tried all kinds of stuff, like headshots and sort of blocking their path, but I just couldn't register enough horse deeps before they got away. I had to get all crafty with it to succeed. One of the horses, and not the other, will flee in the direction that we want to be going, so I had to partially damage that one, then steal the other horse, ride down the first one, finish it off, grab the saddle, and continue. Except the saddle is damaged to 0 health from the flurry of slashes that it took to kill this damn thing. Stupid horse. I just fell out of the Porsche. So disappointed in our saddle, what we're actually supposed to do is race to Talmberg to warn them of the invading army. No matter how good you drive here, you get shot in the leg during this section and start bleeding. And injuries in this game are quite serious. If you don't bandage up when you're bleeding, you will die. But sometimes you've got to bleed to know that you're alive and have a soul. Eventually, we dribble our way into Talmberg, where Sir Robard patches our leg for us and brings us in to report to Sir Divish, the Lord of Talmberg, and KCD lays the plot of the game on us now. Divish and Robard suspect that the skalitz attack must have been carried out by the mercenary army of Sigismund of Hungary, who's here to restore order and claim a rule in the absence of his half-brother, the rightful King Wenceslaus IV, who seems like a nice guy to get a beer with, but absolutely stinks at and has no desire to rule the country. The voice actor for Sir Divish is really bad. I'm sorry, dude. He's way too young.
What's your name, boy?
Having made our report, the good people of Talmberg offer me food and a place to rest. But before we take care of our Sims-like personal needs, we have work to do. Cause for now, no guards are scripted to patrol or arrest us if we tiptoe up to the guardhouse armory and liberate quite a few arrows, 2 bows, and a couple of swords, including Needle, a short sword with a solid modifier to stab damage, i.e. it's good at R1 spam. With that done, head to the kitchen and meet Sir Divish's wife, the hot-ass cougar, Lady Stephanie. She cares for us right away, offering stew, cheese, and wine, and the cook gets in on it too. Protect the women of Talmberg at all costs. So yeah, I mentioned hunger is part of the survival aspect of this game, and there's a proper way to eat. You want to prioritize meats and produce, which spoil easily, then bread, and finally cheese or dried foods. Even if you don't eat them, the longer lasting foods usually sell better. This free plate of cheese might as well be bread because it's just $signs in my eyes. When we're set there, head to bed, and Lady Stephanie enters our room. She offers wine to help us sleep, but not being interrupted would also probably have helped. If we're polite to her, we can recount our story so far and farm some speech XP. We learn her past too. There was already a large age gap when she married Sir Divish at age 18. She lost 2 pregnancies, then Divish was kidnapped for 7 years by a Sir Havel Medek and came back to her as an infirm old man, so Stephanie's been starved for affection for a long time. And with that interesting seed planted in our heads, she pieces out to let us sleep. Goodness woman, the lack of discretion here. Henry has some dying parent nightmares before Sir Robard wakes us up. A crowd has been spotted approaching Talmberg. Fortunately, that's just the remaining skalitz refugees who managed to slip out of the castle thanks to the driving storm that pushed the Cumans back to their tents. But they're not planning on stopping here. They're going to push on to Rattay, the biggest and best fortified city in the region. Sir Radzig is pleased to learn that we survived, and he invites us to join them, but we have to refuse because, per our parent nightmare, we've got to go give them a Christian burial back in Skalitz so they can rest. Radzig is having none of this though, and he asks Divish to deny us any attempts to leave. So, stuck in Talmberg, we wait out the rest of the night. As the dawn breaks above the ground, an old man stands on the hill. Evil Bald Guy has arrived now, and we learn his name, Sir Markvart von Aulitz. He's not just here to sack castles. I mean, he needs something left to rule, and Sir Divish is able to masterfully diffuse the situation with a little self-deprecation and implied, though not outright stated, willingness to support Sigismund if it means peace. His diplomacy has saved Talmberg, and the Cuman army moves on to the relief of the townsfolk. With that, we have control of our character and access to the Talmberg Outer Bailey. There's a single trader who sells lockpicks, and we can sell him our cheesed cheese. Lockpicking is not great on console, but there are a few quests that are made enough easier through lockpicking that I'll occasionally suffer it. Plus, there are some good early treasure chests that are locked. Picks themselves are quite rare in the early games, so collect all that you can from this guy. I spent a little time going around asking all the throwaway, nameless NPC guards and villagers for their thoughts on Sigismund and the Skalitz raid, because every white dialogue option you choose is worth speech experience. When we're ready to advance, we'll need help sneaking out of the castle. Lady Stephanie is our closest ally here so far. She recommends borrowing a suit of armor and slipping out the gate in disguise. She even sugar mamas us some money for bribes just in case. We can collect a talmbergian armor suit by lockpicking a chest in the armory. You gotta use both analog sticks and rotate the lock with one while keeping the lockpick in the golden sweet spot with the other. Harder locks have a smaller sweet spot, and also it'll be closer to the center where it's harder to get the micro movements correct as the lock rotates. Then, on my way downstairs, I suffer the incident. The ladders in this guardhouse are on top of each other, so by stepping off the upper ladder, I walked right through the hole and fell down the second ladder, shattering both of my legs and bleeding profusely. My 3 starter bandages are not enough to stop the bleeding, so I also drink my 1 healing potion to buy some time, and all of a sudden it's a race to find more bandages before I get a game over. Our disguise does get us out the gate, no mention of my tibia poking out sideways through my pants, and I limp to the Talmberg bathhouses where the kindly matron accepts all of my money for a couple scraps of cloth to finally stop the bleeding, though those hit points aren't coming back until we sleep. Then we're on foot all the way to Ravna, a town we passed during our flight from Skalitz. It's a house of 1,000 corpses here, so I robbed some zombies. These dudes all have pretzels, yum. The horror was all a bit much for Henry though, so I took a drink of beer. This isn't even a bit, I just find it extremely fun to roleplay in this game. Giving me the predefined character and letting me color within the lines, so to speak, is a lot easier for me to roleplay than an original character. My blade is thirsty too, so I took down a few spare grave-robbing bandits with R1 spam. It's only okay when we do it. Once inside the Skalitz walls, we start to recognize some of the corpses. Deutsch lies here slain, no matter that he was a vocal Sigismund supporter. And Bianca is dead too, our sweetheart from the bar with a ring and another schnapps. Finally, we reach our parents and go scanning for a shovel to bury them. We find one in the hands of Zbyszek, one of the men we brawled during the poop flinging incident. We stop him from hurting the butcher's dog and scare him off.
Ah! 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 All right, you bastard. You got me. Go down.
That's right. Turn tail and run, you bastard.
We dig a grave for our parents under the linden tree, but before we're able to bury them, we are interrupted. Zbyszek has come back, and he brought a nasty gang of bandits led by a large man with a large club, Runt. I do get a few hits in against Runt. This fight is winnable, but they cutscene you out of it either way, so it doesn't matter. We've lost. Runt has stolen our father's sword and is about to execute us when Teresa shows up with the cavalry from Talmberg.
The games are over.
Turn! Disperse this rabble!
Sad music plays as Henry is carted off in the rain, not far from death due to all of our accumulated injuries. And that is the intro complete. The design of the intro of Kingdom Come Deliverance is so strong, both in terms of gameplay and writing. We've gotten a little taste of many of the gameplay systems, learned some about the world, and had everything taken from us, leaving us angry, sad, and itching to do something about it. To me, this is a sign of really strong and likely pretty centralized game direction. Whatever the opposite of that designed by committee feel that some games have, this is that. As the scene continues, rain breaks for sunshine, and the music lightens up. Teresa brought us in her cart all the way to her uncle's mill outside Rattay to stay while we recover, where Henry has some nasty nightmares, but finally wakes up 2 weeks later, ready to carpe some DMs. We are now playing the game. Welcome to the open-ended part of KCD. We have an overarching quest to hunt and kill Runt to reclaim our father's sword, and as a bonus, it would be nice to get Sigismund's men driven out of the country. But we have no idea how to make those goals happen, so our more immediate quest is to seek audience with Sir Radzig, who's staying in Perkstein Castle within Rattay. But we're going to do everything else besides that. In our chest are already 5 DLC treasure maps that point to some OP loot for the early game. And the few items we stole at Talmberg are no longer considered stolen. Stealing is pretty fair in this game. The items become yours after only a day or two, unlike some games where items are marked stolen forever. sometimes realism in games works in our favor. Peshek, the miller, and Teresa's uncle, didn't board us out of the goodness of his heart though, and he demands payment for the bed and medicine. The game does not normally expect us to have cash by now, so he tries to offer us some criminal job to pay him back, but I'm like, nah dude, here's 50 bucks, which makes him angry? Bitch, remind me never to buy your bread. Speak to Teresa. It turns out the butcher's dog has been following us ever since Skalitz because we were nice to it, so we gain Mutt as a companion here. His skills include slightly contributing in combat, sniffing out loot at a high level, but most importantly, he can fly around taking down rabbits to level our hunting skill because actually shooting wild game is nearly impossible. Nabbing a few herbs around the mill got me my 15th level in herbalism, skills maxed at 20, and I took a perk for 15% higher sale price on herbs, perfectly timed for us to spam the vendors of rattay with flowers. Then I was reminded what's wrong with the dog. This thing pathfinds like an asshole. Mutt's hitbox is huge, and he runs around under your feet while you try to loot bodies or pick up herbs, locking you into a slow dialogue every time you misclick him. It is easier to hit herb hitboxes if you crouch down, but now all the villagers walking by think you're stealthing, so they'll constantly yell things like, "Hey, up to no good, huh?" It's kinda stupid. I stopped in at the rattay bathhouse before heading into town for a bath and my laundry done. Aside from taking damage and needing repair, your clothes and armor get dirty so fast in this game, and folks think less of you in dialogue. If you want better odds at passing speech checks, and I think better haggling in shops, getting your clothes washed first can help with that. I cannot defend how fast you get filthy though. It takes literally like 5 minutes of just existing. The devs were way too aggressive with this. The first thing we see inside the walls of Rattay are the sad skalitz refugees camped out and mostly reduced to begging. We can farm some speech points learning about their situations. Then it's on to the shops. The swordsmith has a whetstone in his shop we can use to manually sharpen our blades without using a kit. You have to mind angle and pressure while you pump to keep the wheel spinning, and you can even blunt your blade if you grind it wrong. It's sort of a cool minigame, and you can farm maintenance skill by blunting your blade on purpose and continually fixing it if you really want to. But repair kits are 100 times easier, so I only did this once ever for footage. It is wild to me some of the features that made it into this game. The apothecary is maybe the most important shop here. First, we owe the man 50 groschen for the medicine he used on us during our convalescence. But this man will buy anything, whereas most other merchants are stuck in their lane. Specifically, any books you're done reading, herbs you aren't saving for potions, and random valuables like chalices and rings are good to sell here. Vendor coin is limited, but KCD has the best implementation that I've ever found for limited merchant cash. This man may only have 250 coin for buying our stuff today, but if we sell to him what we can, he'll flip our items off camera and have more cash tomorrow so that he can buy even more of our trash. The system scales with you while still feeling believable, and it's kind of fun feeling like we helped out our favorite people. Plus, this man has an alchemy bench in his back room, and we've got hundreds of herbs by now that we can turn into potions. Now, I don't use consumables in games. I'm that guy. I just don't. I might need the thing later, and if I don't need it later, that's just extra money that I could have earned by selling the item. Well, if you're like me, Kingdom Come Deliverance is one of the best games for actually getting you to use your consumables. For one, money isn't that good in KCD past the early game, and limited vendor cash complicates your ability to sell stuff anyway. The potions don't have a great sale price, but they do have effects strong enough to bother using them for most situations in the game. There are buffs to strength, agility, or bow skill for use when you're approaching a bandit camp. Then there are potions for stealth and night vision, and some more esoteric ones like horsemanship you can take before a horse race, or digestive in case you ate too much, plus poisons you can stick on your weapons. There are also quests in the game that demand an Artemisia potion or a lullaby potion, and it's a big headache saver if you have those prepared ahead of time. So, all of that herb gathering you did was not just to grind leg day XP. We also want to power level alchemy using those herbs for cash and to make the whole rest of the game easier as an herbal murdering superhero. The alchemy system, much like sharpening your blade, is a fascinating verisimilar minigame, but it just takes so damn long. What you want to do is crap out marigold decoctions for a day or two. They're a weak heal over time, and their ingredients, just marigold and nettle, are plentiful around Rattay. The alchemy system forgives one mistake per potion, which we can abuse by forgetting to even cook it. just toss the cold herbs in the liquid and collect your potion. After an hour or two of this, I suggest a podcast. At level 10 alchemy, you can take a perk that lets you auto brew any potion you've made before, and you still get the XP, so it's actually easier to go from level 10 to 13 when you can then upgrade auto brew to yield 3 potions. So only then is it worth cracking out your rarer herbs and brewing the more complex or expensive potions. It's merely a pleasant side effect that this process will line your pockets with silver. So far, multiple hours into our run, we've barely played the video game, but we've done a ton of groundwork for success later on. The crazy thing is, I'm not sure that doing all of this is even playing it wrong. Because alchemy benches aren't common, and it's not like players are going to find a field of flowers that they need, only pick a handful, then travel a kilometer to reach an alchemy bench and brew 1 copy of a potion they need. The travel time and the inventory management for that is insane. It's somehow more reasonable to gather thousands of herbs and slam alchemy for hours just based on the overhead of the process and how easy it is to brew all the potions that you'll need all game in 1 sitting. Which leads me to my point. A game so infatuated with realism shouldn't reward us for breaking that realism as badly as we possibly can on purpose. Simple as. Autobrew either needed to be available at level 1, or the XP needed to be much lower to make alchemy feel good. Anyway, let's play some video game. Head to the lower castle and drink a savior schnapps. Perhaps one you've brewed yourself. We have a heist to pull off. The guard tower here contains a few well-priced melee weapons that are ours to pick up, yet to set foot there is considered trespassing. So we have to rush in and take everything we can grab under the time limit like supermarket sweep before they get mad enough to arrest us. It's not stealing though. The only item we need to make it out of there with is the Piercer, a mid-level sword with an outsized stab damage modifier. It took me a few attempts to learn the layout and make it out with a nice haul that included the Piercer. Heading to the eastern gates now, I stopped at Huntsman Berthold to cash in my heisted weapons for a handful of arrows before setting off on our world tour. Just like Oblivion, advancing the main quest at all changes the world state and makes it more dangerous out there. So my goal is to make a tour around the map first, digging up some treasure and having adventures before the plot puts us on rails with any timed quests. This is exactly what our dad didn't want us doing. He has us scared to face the world, complacent career student. Let's graduate and make a name for ourselves out there. To satisfy my hunger, I had some alcohol. In fact, I've been satisfying all my hunger with alcohol these past few days of potion making. Drinking is not a skill that we can slam XP for since, blacking out exists. So it's a skill best raised slowly day after day. Thing is, alcoholic drinks in this game also provide no small amount of nourishment. How do you spell relief? I get DRUNK. You'll never need real food if you have liquor for every meal. It's a bit of a shame because the game has this whole system for hunting and meat spoilage and ways to delay that spoilage and all other kinds of food, and none of that matters when cheap wine stays good forever and fills you up for half a day. Another set of cool game ideas that are trivially obsoleted. And speaking of cheese, our first stop on our world tour is the horse breeding town of Neuhof, shortly to the east of Rattay. It's got some big, unmonitored paddocks full of horses, which is to say, experience point farms for our sword, bow, warfare, strength, agility, and I think also hunting skill. No, before you call this barbaric, please wait. One of the first events on the main quest is for all of these horses to get slaughtered by bandits anyway, so I'm just giving their lives some meaning and extracting a little value before nobody can. But I'd abso-friggin-lutely do it either way. I even farmed some Houndmaster skill by praising my dog and feeding him horse meat hot off the bone, which was kind of darkly hilarious to me, I don't know. Horse slaughter is probably not what the developers want us to do, but this is such an amazing level farm for a variety of skills, it would be a real shame not to. Just try to focus fire one horse at a time and strike the killing blow because that gives a lot more XP. You don't want a horse to bleed out and kill steal yourself. The next day, utterly unbothered, Zola, the wife of the head groom here, bids us good day and sells us a horse.
Have you looked them over?
Oh, I am very familiar with them. There are a few different horse stats, but all I care about is carrying capacity. Trojan, a minimum level horse for sale here, has the highest capacity in the game, only tied by one DLC horse much later. But Trojan is a little pricey. Zola's cheapest, crappiest horse is only $10.50, and with some haggling, I'm able to afford it, trading all of my hard-earned cash for Boxer, a chestnut Belgian draft horse. I think. I asked a horse girl about it. Owning a horse is totally optional in this game, but it makes it much less painful to travel anywhere that lacks a fast travel beacon, and we can freely swap between our inventory and the horses. Yeah, the horse has inventory even without saddlebags equipped. Hort space increases our effective carry weight drastically, so if nothing else, you should get a horse just to treat it as a bank. Hey, you remember those treasure maps we woke up with? Those treasures are lying about the world, hidden in clever spots, as well as 20-something non-DLC treasures, and we don't need the maps to go loot them. Many of the treasures require a spade to dig up, which I nabbed back at the mill, and many of them need to be lockpicked. Now, I avoided any with hard or very hard locks because, wouldn't you believe it, we'd also have to grind lockpicking to even be allowed to attempt those, and that's one grind I'm okay skipping. But I worked the remaining treasures into my world tour, starting with this one in the woods south of Neuhof, easy to ride to now with Boxer. These treasures typically have low 3-digit gold, plus a high-level piece of armor, high-level weapon, an alchemy recipe, and a level 4 skill book. And, not or, that all comes in each treasure. Finding even one of these is worth all the other work we've done so far this game combined. Now, I haven't slept since before that night of horse stabbing, so I'm starting to wink out from tiredness. Neuhof does not have lodgings for us, so I traveled northwest a kilometer to the Inn on the Glade, looking for a place to take a nice afternoon coma. This old whore, literally her name, but I was just calling her that, stopped me on the way in, asking me to pickpocket a grandpa, which is super barking up the wrong tree. Listen, stabbing horses is a great farm for valuable combat skills, but I don't need to pickpocket grandpas. That just makes me better at pickpocketing other grandpas. God bless this alehouse wench who rents me a room for $2. I had to say no to a shave at the bathhouse earlier because they wanted 15. 2 is nothing. She also sold me some lockpicks for future treasure cracking. After sleeping all day, I pay for my coffee and leave before the sun goes down. Walk for hours in the dark, feeling all hell. I took another day or so, gathering treasures and punking farm animals in the southeast corner of the map. One treasure even contained a stinger, which is the best sword for R1 spam in the game, so that's my endgame melee weapon sorted. And, awkwardly, I assembled most of a plate mail kit long before I had the carrying capacity to even keep it on my person. Our horse saddlebags don't help with that because armor kind of has to be on us. I'm happy to spend perk points accumulated in the strength stat on carrying capacity upgrades though, because a lot of the perks in this game are kind of abstract. It's not like we have to trade off better DPS for carry weight. Perks in this game are stuff like, you have a strong body odor, so women like you more, but you're less stealthy. Or, beer is half as strong, but that makes wine twice as strong. The perks are all weird, and it has the effect of many of them barely mattering or requiring specific circumstances to matter. So, yeah, a straightforward perk like more carry weight is a win in KCD. If you're the kind of player who gets bummed out by carry weight in games, you might actually find KCD is able to break you out of those patterns though. Because combined with limited vendor gold, and gold not even being that good, carry weight really is mostly about carrying your own kit. But that didn't stop me from very carefully shanking somebody's horse to death at the Inn on the Glade to steal its saddle. To avoid butchering the saddle this time, I carefully lined up my headshots and Anton Shigurd this thing to walk away with an only partially destroyed 2-bag saddle for Boxer. Then I paid at the same inn to stay for several nights this time, which actually just buys that room for you as a permanent home. It's worth buying up all the inn rooms you find to establish a network of beds across the world, because even if you responsibly make it to an inn at night, the stupid innkeeper can go to bed early and deny you lodgings if you don't already have the room. Okay, in addition to treasures, I'm stopping at many of the hidden herb gardens on my world tour. Always located in the woods, there will just be these unattended plots where you can pick a few dozen herbs, each of 2 or 3 different varieties. It's the best way to amass some of the rarer herbs like belladonna, which goes in savior schnapps, and the strong bane poison. How good of you to join us. Alright, I'm back on the horse in a literal sense. Boxer is carrying his body weight in herbs by now. I happened across a boar hunting spot in the woods, so I tried to bag one just so that I could talk about hunting. I mean, seriously, hunting game is pointless when you can just hunt for a Labatt Blue twice a day. Hilariously, there is a drinking perk that steadies your bow aim only while drunk and makes it worse while sober, which obviously I'm running that. But hunting is rough because trying to bag wild animals at low bow skill is ridiculously challenging. This boar took 4 arrows to kill, each of which was a skill shot. Hares may die easier, but you will not be landing those shots. KCD has quite a few of these inverted skill curves. You need bow skill to hit shots and gain more bow skill. You need speech skill to pass dialogue checks and gain speech skill. You need reading skill to be able to read skill books that increase your reading skill. It's a struggle getting started in this game by design, so you're not crazy if you find this game frustrating. The game really does encourage you to cheese skill ups at the start just so you're not behind the curve all game. Our second stop on our world tour is Ujits town in the northeast of the map. Ujits should be your first destination in this game because the scribe here will teach us how to read for 50 bucks and a couple of days. Reading helps, or might be required, on a few late-game main quests, but more importantly, there are 4 tiers of skill books for every stat and skill in the game that we can sit and take actual in-game time to read through for experience if we know how to read. It's a much cleaner way to gain skill XP than knocking out wayfarers or shooting horses, but there is a cap on how much reading Henry has focus for on a given day, so it's a skill like drinking that you'll want to work on over time. And once we can read, we can also pop open those DLC maps for reading skill. We can always glance at them, but now opening them up counts as reading them, and it increases our reading skill instantaneously. So whatever DLC these are from essentially came with some pay-to-win reading XP. Any potion recipes we get from treasures work the same way, and the scribe sells a load of Skyrim-style lore books that we can read for fun and XP. We can also rob his house for more books that he is jealously not even offering for sale, jerk. Unfortunately, that got me noticed because this game cheats and lightning rods NPCs to you if you do a crime. Seriously, try lockpicking anything in a town. Doesn't matter if you're in somebody's closed shed at night. A villager will pop in behind you and start screaming for the guards. Yet, the fee we owe for getting caught is easily worth the reading XP that this earned us. Remember folks, if the punishment is less than what you gain, that's just the cost of doing business. Laws only exist for the poor.
He who lived without money, without shelter, without possessions
Enough
of
of
any
this
kind,
nonsense.
and
Shut his
spread
beak for
the
him,
word
someone.
of God.
The crowd thinks this street preacher is a charlatan, but I think he may be the real deal. I bought a room at the inn here and settled down for several days of reading and drinking. I was living like Bukowski. I wake up, grab beer, grab rear, shave beard, put on some scene gear, then read as many pages as Henry will consume. But that won't fill a whole day, so I also grabbed regional treasures and even spent some time at the Hag's Alchemy bench out in the woods. My days in Ujits are packed with learning and value accumulation, moisturized, in my lane, thriving. Innkeepers and alemaids you wouldn't think of as economic powerhouses, but they do buy anything classified as food, which includes potions. So thanks to the compounding merchant gold, this beer girl made me quite rich off of a few days of alchemy during my reading bender. Also, say hi to the Parist Preach of Ujits, Father Godwin. He practices with a wooden sword and seems quite competent with it, and a few other characters allude to his mysterious past. We never learned too much about him in this game, but the interest in Godwin is definitely being teased for the sequel. When we're finally potioned and readinged out, I woke up on a new day, have my customary breakfast wine, and hit the road. There are plenty of treasures to gather around Ravna and Skalitz, though the bandit presence is higher here, so we get to test our weapons against actual bad guys instead of livestock. I did get a game over once when this fake crying woman lured me into a 4-on-1 bandit trap. These ambushes are actually hilarious and they always get me pretty good. But listen, we do have to talk more about the combat. I said it before, but combat in this game sucks. And KCD fans are kinda toxic about it. They really like to echo get good, which makes sense. When I put in a lot of effort learning something, I'm proud of it too. If you spend actual hours and hours learning how to properly duel an opponent one-on-one, you might get competent at parrying blows and chaining your own attacks. But I still don't personally grant that the ability for you to learn the system makes it be not awful. Having to train for dozens of hours just to beat a bandit whose gear costs a tenth of yours is not good game design. And nobody can defend how terrible combat gets when you face more than one foe, which is 90% of encounters. Your dog can briefly distract one guy, but otherwise it's not even a contest. KCD pulls no punches. The way other games will kind of treat it like a kung fu movie and only have one guy engage you at a time, they all have a go at you here. You will be quickly flanked, powerless to turn or run away to prevent that because of the forced camera lock-on, then repeatedly head-bonked from alternating sides, swirling you in a discombobulating 360 with no control of your movement until the game tells you that you've died. Your only chance is if you can get against one opponent alone. I already mentioned R1 spam helps you succeed. You can also drink an Artemisia potion or Aqua Vitae for combat buffs and try getting real in their face with it. With a perk, you can win most clinches and then use that momentum to do some good damage. Melee Archer is kind of strong too, where you just kite backwards and shoot their abdomen. Enemies can't block arrows, and it is much easier to land shots when your foe is 5 feet in front of you. It is really tough to learn combat properly in KCD, and I think those that do should get a shiny trophy for the hours they spent getting competent at it. Great job, you did it. but then understand that mastering a broken system doesn't make that system be not broken for the average player. Side note, you leave a lot of expensive armor on the ground in this game because you just don't have the carry capacity. I set for myself a 100-to-1 rule of thumb for value to weight ratio that I would pick up, which made me end up with a ton of pairs of leather gloves, because even the most common ones are like 500-to-1 for some reason. The glove makers of Bohemia are ripping everybody off bad. There's not too much content in Ravna and Skalitz besides treasures and herbs, but there is this one larger bandit camp at Skalitz that's pretty fun for testing your combat skills. You can actually stealth them if you want to, or pull one at a time because they're not all standing on top of each other like a lot of bandits do. This single mid-sized bandit camp is like the most fun action sequence all game, and I wish there were one or two more of these. Then, it's finally back to civilization. The next town on our world tour is Merahoyed, which is the one town besides Neuhof where you can buy a horse. I actually had enough cash by now for their best horse, warhorse Jenda, so I traded in Boxer. Jenda has less carrying capacity, but she's very fast and can maintain a gallop for an eternity, which will help when the main quest has us crisscrossing the world. That's all for here. Samopesh is the next town on tour, and that has almost no content. There's not even an inn, so I can't stay overnight drinking, and this place barely even comes up in any quests all game. Samopesh is truly the Bohemian crap city. Easy come, easy go. I'm out of here in a pouring rainstorm toward our next town. No punches left to roll with, you gotta keep me focused. You want it? Sasau. This place is the busiest city in the game, slightly more so even than Rattay. And it's a very common quest activity spot, so of all towns in the game, this is one where you don't want to rack up bad reputation or bounty from doing random crimes. The north half of Sasau includes a monastery, which is sort of its own private township, and then there's an excellent inn in the middle of Sasau, and the city proper is south of the river, with traders of all sorts, including another scribe whom we buy out of books. I stationed in Sasau for a couple of days drinking and reading, as I did in Ujits, because it has everything you could ask for. Once we're done here, in the southwest corner of the map is a bandit town, Vranik, but it's not populated yet due to plot armor. Still, we can activate its fast travel beacon for convenience later, and grab some very nice hidden treasures around it. Ledechko is the only remaining town on our tour now. I buy a room at its inn, then with one final sack of treasure at the base of a tree in the field south of Ledechko, we are free to proceed back to Rattay, which is rather close, and actually play the damn video game. Except we've hit a snag. See, my constant drinking has by now turned into actual alcoholism, which gives a huge debuff that we can't even alleviate with more drinking. The plan was to drink until the pain over, but what's worse, the pain or the hangover? What we've got to do to fix ourselves is drink more. A hair of the dog potion, that is. I brew up a few more in case this happens again, then drink one to fix myself so that we can do more hardcore drinking in the future. I seriously hope Henry is taking a multivitamin. I include this because this quest to cure my alcoholism is actually one of my favorite things about this game, and it's something that I think survival mechanics enable. Kingdom Come Deliverance is great at creating emergent gameplay moments that translate really well into storytelling because they feel like adventures. Sun dawns on a new day in the city that I'm actually supposed to be in. There are several skill books for sale throughout Rattay that I didn't buy before leaving on tour because one of the reading perks makes books cheaper, and I didn't have that yet, but now I do, so I grabbed those books. And because I have what you'd call FU money at this point, I do some shopping for fun. Henry is no longer a scrub. Let's show the lords that I'm fancy. I like it when you call me Zaddy. $2.4 thousand go to the blacksmith for the game's best horseshoes so that Jenda is even faster. And in a trip to the tailor, I outfit a very nice outer jacket for Henry. There's like 4 different layers of coat you can wear all at the same time, and I don't really care to learn the difference. Our beautiful new coat is yellow, and I grab a nice yellow hat to match, deciding against wearing a helmet this game. Henry looks like a dork in dialogue when he's wearing a helmet, and this way I'm more at home among nobility. Our herbal murder person costume is complete, with Henry glowing like a sunny dandelion. Now, let us do the main quest. The game expects us to be a poor blacksmith's son, horseless, illiterate, and bad at combat. I'm still bad at combat, but here we are rolling into an audience with Lord Radzig in great clothes, a proficient reader, quite rich, and the best horse in the game with dozens of levels across many different stats and skills. I also went to the meeting drunk as a hilarious roleplay for my cockiness. This game's cutscenes tend to be long and info-dense, so I'm going to summarize what I can. But they are quite interesting, and they have some great acting, so I would call them a highlight of the game. So, we know Sigismund is here to conquer Bohemia from Wenceslas, but Sigismund didn't expect many of the regional lords of Bohemia, like these gentlemen gathered here, to remain so loyal to the king, so unexpected resistance is slowing him down and costing him a lot of money. The expense caused him to sack Kuttenberg off camera for its riches, and it's probably why he went to Skalitz with its silver mines, and it's why his army is made up of human mercenaries. He can't afford to pay them real wages, but instead he allows them to pillage the lands as they go. Of these men, Sir Hanush is the steward lord of Rattay, and he's my favorite. He loves his drink and humor, but he's also very observant and pragmatic. Sir Hans Capon should be the ruler of Rattay, but not until he comes of age. The king would usually decide when somebody is old enough in a case like this, but the king is not really able to perform his duties these days. And of course, Radzig led Skalitz and is temporarily sheltering here in Rattay.
I'm sorry, sir, but I had to bury my parents.
Had to? Do you think you were the only man who lost someone there? But the others listened to their lord.
And it wasn't just your own life you nearly threw away. So Robard and his men risked theirs to save you.
I'm sorry, but I had to.
Oh, there you go. When you have to, Radzig.
Henry came here to say sorry for losing your sword and ended up getting accepted into Radzig's service, which is quite the promotion. This makes Hans angry, and I'm honestly on his side here. Henry should be punished for endangering Divish's men when he snuck out to Skalitz, not given a job. But we were. So our first task in Radzig's service is to see Captain Bernard for combat training. This expands on what we learned from Vashek forever ago in Skalitz, but it goes more in depth with combos and defensive stuff that I will never use. You can abuse repeated trainings with Bernard to level your skills and maybe actually learn the combat. For anyone trying to play the combat in good faith, you will be seeing a lot of Bernard. Archery training is next. They expect you to flub this because level 1 bow skill will have you swaying like a willow in the wind, but I do okay. Sir Hans challenges us to a heads-up archery contest where I absolutely smoke him, so he doubles down and asks for a sword fight, which I also win with R1 spam, and he owes us his bow as a prize. Capon's bow has bad damage, but it draws faster than most bows, which is actually a great trade-off until opponents start having plate armor. It is good for hunting. With training done, Henry faces a lifetime of menial jobs in Sir Radzig's employ. We've got to find the bailiff, who's basically the chief of police and also judge. Unfortunately for the bailiff's scribe, that's who I found first, and a quick knockout lets me loot a whole load of books from his shelves and sneak some reading XP. The bailiff puts us on patrol in the town guard, but first we're instructed to collect some armor. I want to shout out this armory guard who's like the only NPC in the game that acknowledges that we're dressed like a knight rather than a peasant when I arrive to pick up what's supposed to be baby's first armor set.
That's all.
You want a kiss and a hug as well?
Actual patrol duty involves walking really slowly to accompany this Eric Idle-looking mother. Unfortunately, it looks like the scribe woke up and put a little bounty out for me, so I had to deal with getting arrested on the job real quick. Geez, I thought cops look out for each other on this kind of thing. So, this game is largely historically accurate. You can detect a huge amount of pride the writers have for their country's history in KCD's design. For one, the countryside is beautiful and the game focuses on highlighting that. But the game is also frequently educational. Constantly, as we encounter new concepts, be they historical beekeeping when we pass a hive, or what Moravia is when it's briefly mentioned in dialogue, the game prompts us to press D-pad down to open up the lore entry on whatever concept. They can be pretty sneaky about learning, too. KCD uses escort missions like this to let the NPC lore dump education on us while we're captive, and Henry asks smart, clarifying questions to keep the conversation going that feel like natural, curious things that Henry would ask in this position. Our final task today is to close down the taverns, which gets awkward when we discover Sir Hans Capon himself is keeping the bar open past closing time. Henry, with a combination death wish, autistic adherence to the rules, does not understand his place and tries to force Sir Capon to head home, resulting in a fist fight with the young lord. Both of us have hella egg on our face when Sir Hanush shows up, rightfully angry. We're both to be punished, but Hanush is clever and spins this into a teaching moment. Hans can take his hunting trip tomorrow as he planned to, but we have to be his page. Hans is going to learn how to lead, and us how to follow. I really enjoy the writing in this game. So, the following morning, we are hunting with Sir Hans. The pompous young lord is amazed we own a horse by now and starts the day giving backhanded insults, but he softens quickly once we're out in the crisp morning air. This is a slow escort section riding to our hunting spot together, but the dialogue and the properly gorgeous views actually make this tolerable. Once we arrive, Sir Hans, always the competitor, wants to see who can bag more hares before noon. Hares are so small and flighty that actually shooting them is unrealistic, but by now I have enough Houndmaster skill for Mutt to go hunting for us. He just sprints around the area, genociding rabbits for a few hours, and I click on their corpses he retrieves because that's what triggers the hunting XP. We only need a single hare to beat Hans, but we could have had like 24. Unsatisfied with his loss, Hans wants us to hunt boar now. He manages to wound one, but has to chase it when it flees, and in his rush to pursue it...
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
This is our first chance to begin our overdue revenge on the cumans who burnt skalitz. Take out both cumans, surprising both ourselves and Sir Hans, and finally turning the corner that makes us friends. And I make sure to pick up a cuman bow, which is actually our endgame bow. It's not the most damaging one, but it's up there, and better draw speed, etc. Once we bring the wounded Sir Hans back to Rattay safely, our courage has earned us another promotion, thank goodness. One more day of guard duty would have been too many. And with that, the game kickstarts the action. Captain Bernard bursts in with bad news, and the plot escalates. The stables at Neuhof have been raided, and the horses were slaughtered, which is really awkward for Henry, but we managed to keep a straight face. It sounds like it was a group of bandits, led by a huge fellow in black armor. That sounds a lot like Runt, the guy who beat us up at Skalitz and stole our father's sword, so we begged to go along and are permitted. Bernard is a dick about having to babysit us at first, reluctantly handing us a sad little horse called Pebbles, but we can swap back to Jenda and smoke them all on the path to Neuhof. The stables are a bloodbath, and it's the setting for some of the best gameplay in Kingdom Come Deliverance. You see, this game's DNA is a full 25% Disco Elysium or Sherlock Holmes type of game. Several quests have us performing large-scale investigations using deduction and interrogations to advance the plot, and it's not always clear where we need to start. Quest markers will give us a region sometimes rather than a pinpoint. We might interrogate one NPC who mentions that the guy we're looking for has been seen visiting the church, so we can either pass a high speech check on the priest or lockpick his desk for a letter that points us to the next clue. Environmental details will matter too. There might be bloodstains to follow, or trailing an NPC might lead you straight to their hideout. Pulling off this kind of gameplay requires excellent writing that plans for a whole bunch of contingencies and, well, KCD doesn't nail it. This is not Baldur's Gate 3. I ended up screwing up quite a few quests despite earnestly trying to play all of them straight. But for the most part, these investigation quests are very clever. The slow pace and gameplay change-up is something to be aware of, though, if you don't want this in your action RPG. So, what's the deal at Neuhof? Bandits came in the night and started hamstringing horses and killed the head groom when he got in their way. They didn't steal anything, weirdly, and it sounds like there was disagreement and shouting between the bandits. This one stable boy, Ginger, claims he heard nothing, which is suspicious given the yelling and horse screams. Indeed, if we follow a blood trail north, we find a dying bandit with Ginger's hoof pick in his belly. And of course, Ginger has run off by the time we get back to question him, so now we're on a goose chase to track down Ginger. He's friends with charcoal burners, so check out a few local charcoal camps till we find the one that his friends work at. It sounds like we're not the only ones looking for him, so we have to kill some bandits first to ensure his safety, then meet up with the fugitive for questioning. We learn Ginger is innocent after all. He fled because one of the bandits and he recognized each other. It was a guy from Ujits with a limp who stole Ginger's hoofpick and stabbed the bandit that we found earlier. So we have Limping Man in Ujits as our next lead. But before that, we can do Ginger a solid and convince Zola to take him back, which is worth a small prize from Ginger if we visit him at Neuhof later. Report what we learned to Bernard and Radzig, who concludes this operation was probably about creating fear and chaos. With his blessing, we're to proceed to Ujits and continue investigating. Upon arrival there, begin questioning the villagers. We get a name for the Limping Man, Lumpy Lubosh, and directions to his cottage at the edge of town. This game strikes a reasonable balance between NPCs just giving you the info you need or demanding some kind of side quest or bribe first, and sometimes it is a speech check or a perk point in first aid that makes the difference. Well, there is a crowd gathered at Lumpy's place.
Move along, citizens. Move along. There's nothing to see here.
If that's what you call nothing to see, I'd like to know what something to see looks like.
Looks like Lumpy got on the wrong side of the bandit gang and they've murdered him very artistically. He's gutted and nailed up with Judas painted overhead in his own blood. We actually don't learn much here. Question the townsfolk after, and they reveal he's been seen going to confession a lot lately. We can try to question Father Godwin, but of course a confession is something that is private and sacred to God. This is a great example of where the workaround quest is really long and annoying, but passing a high speech check can advance the game much more smoothly. Take those starting speech points, y'all. We're able to convince Godwin to confide the name of Lumpy's friend in Ledechko, who's named Riki. Lumpy was one of the dissenting bandits who thought that they'd be stealing the horses rather than slaughtering them. He must have been murdered and labeled Judas by the other worse bandits for quitting the operation early. Henry still had plenty of energy, so I just overnighted it to Ledechko and then had to wait around for folks to wake up. Questioning people here reveals that Riki is named Riki because his dad's a tanner and he always smells bad. Speak to that tanner dad, Riki's whore girlfriend at the baths, and the innkeeper he sells poached game to learn Riki is not such a bad guy per se. He's probably out hiding in the hills now in a little tunnel that he uses as a camp while he poaches. When we roll up on him, the poor guy thinks that we're one of Runt's men come to kill him until we reveal that Runt is our common enemy. Riki confirms there were 2 gangs involved in the Neuhof raid. His gang, including the late Lumpy and 2 dudes named Timmy and Pius, spoke up and jumped ship when people began dying, and now they're being hunted for their betrayal as well as to ensure their silence. And speak of the devil, Runt's men are here to kill Riki right now, and our only shot of surviving is to ambush them together. After some intense melee archer combat, we win, and Riki asks to be let off the hook, but like, this dude is a brigand who steals from small businesses. I don't think that a Henry who insisted on shutting down a tavern that Sir Hans Capon was busy drinking at would let this criminal go free.
You're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Ah! All right, enough. I give up, you hear?
Well, follow Riki's lead to the 3rd good bandit, Timmy, who works at the mill south of Merhoyed. He's not there right now, but his sister forwards us to a nearby farm where he's hiding out. For the 2nd time today, Runt's men show up to kill one of the good bandits, but these ones actually aren't hostile to us. If we convince the man we're also hoping to kill Timmy, not only do we get in the good graces of the bandits, but it's worth a few hundred coin.
He's at the Colburn's farm.
Right back where he started. Are you yanking my pizzle?
So 3 of them run off to kill Timmy on our tip. They leave a 4th man with us to keep an eye on us, but I just run along with them so we're all one crew. The bandit they assigned to watch us is okay with slaughtering horses, but apparently he draws the line at stealth knockouts of innocent wayfarers and attacks us, so I have to kill his ass, which it turns out has no downsides. Then after catching up with the rest and running a solid kilometer together, we witness the group's leader, Moorcock, cut down Timmy. Only Pius remains now of the good bandits. We are officially recruited for having helped out, and we're told where the bandit camp lies. Then Moorcock tries to hit the dusty trail. But I didn't let Riki go free, and he was half decent. No way I'm turning down a chance to rid the world of more bandit scum. One small reason I love Kingdom Come Deliverance is that the NPCs will actually run to their destinations in this game. They don't teleport. You can follow them along the road, and they will get to where they're going. Their camp is at an abandoned village near Ravna called Pribyslavitz, so let's ride back and report everything we've learned to Sir Radzig. He has moved his men by this point out of rattay and to a military camp outside of Merhoyed, approximately in the center of the game world, which is quite convenient given how often we'll need to come here. Radzig is like, hell yeah, go infiltrate that bandit camp, learn everything about it, and sabotage it while you're there. But right now is a good mid-game point to pause and work in some of the side quests. Infiltrating Pribyslavitz is not timed, but once we go there, it kicks off a series of action-packed main quests that we will want to complete mostly all in a row. There's plenty of random junk we can collect to make the coming quests easier. An Artemisia potion, a lullaby potion, 10 bandages, 10 charcoal, 2 thistles, a mint, and a comfrey flower from what I remember. Maybe some bard potions too to help pass speech checks. There's a few characters around the world who are involved in late-game main quests, but who are indisposed to help us unless we help them first. So solving their side quests before we need them is our goal right now. Chief among those is Brother Nicodemus, the herbalist and physician at Sasau Monastery. Enter his good graces by first weeding his garden, then showing him a collection of one of each herb, which we mostly already hold, though you can just buy any ones you're missing from him awkwardly. Another critical person to locate is Father Simon, who was the parish priest in Skalitz many years ago. If we head to Ravna now, there's one lonely, stubborn man still living there because he promised his dad that he would never give up their family home. He's hoping others will come in eventually to rebuild Ravna too. What will really encourage people to return is if we can find Ravna a priest, Father Simon. He hasn't been seen in years because he allegedly got his housekeeper pregnant and she died, and he departed in shame. But there are rumors he's been seen in the area living as a hermit, and the poor housekeeper's parents may know where to find him. Those parents have a death wish because they've returned to the Skalitz area too. They've noticed wreaths of flowers being left on their daughter's grave that they for sure didn't leave there. So I search up the grave and look in an expanding radius around it for signs of Father Simon. He's indeed nearby, actually having been taken captive by two bandits who just don't notice me walk right through with my lit torch. So I stealth drop both of them to rescue this Alan Tudyk looking priest and convince him that he can do more good in God's eyes by serving his community than feeling sorry for himself. This installs Father Simon at Ravna to help them rebuild the town, and he's now available to us during a timed quest later without having to do all of this. Around now is when I noticed that I have a drinking problem. Again, a different one. Drinking too much makes a lot of this footage unusable because I can't be making y'all nauseous. I never personally minded effects like this in video games, but I knew I had to tone it down. It does make horse riding comically difficult. Okay, well, with Brother Nicodemus and Father Simon helped, we're good to continue the main quest and infiltrate the bandit camp at Pribyslavitz. We're greeted not by bandits first, but by humans, which is actually a big reveal. Bandits and humans working together means the Neuhof raid can likely be traced back to Markvart von Aulitz and therefore to Sigismund. Now, this mission can be done non-violently. By helping Runt's men kill Timmy, we're welcomed into the camp where we could wait until nightfall, then poison their stew, burn a few arrows, and slip out. But our Henry does not pass an opportunity to beat bandit ass, so I methodically took down the entire bandit and human camps, which are separate areas within the walls of Pribyslavitz. Doing this killing here actually doesn't reduce their numbers in the coming battles, but it was still worth combat experience, loot, and of course it was fun. Sabotaging the camp does help though, and I was able to do that in total peace once I had taken everyone out. I had one celebratory drink afterwards, which made me extremely drunk again, and I realized I had made a big mistake. There's a drinking perk that gets you twice as drunk, with the idea that it saves you money and keeps drunk synergies up longer, but I had also taken a perk that makes wine twice as potent, so I was getting quad smashed just for slaking my thirst. Like with our other drinking problem, we can fix this one by drinking more. There's a potion called Lethean Water that resets your perk points, so I make a mental note to undertake that emergent side quest once our current mission is through. First though, spill the tea on the bandit camp to Radzig. Their numbers and preparedness sounds like they're planning an attack, so it seems our best course of action is to strike first. That will happen once we go to Talmberg and ask Sir Divish for his help. Instead, I hoofed it over to Sasau and brewed up that perk reset potion so I can get sauced again without ruining the video. Plus, Johanka from Skalitz is here, helping heal the wounded who've been brought here from the Skalitz raid, and she is stretched way beyond her means. Johanka, we remember, she's the one who yelled to let us know that the police were coming back when we were slinging poop at Deutsch's house, so I'm keen to help her out now. Plus, we are going to need her healing skills later, and that gets messy if she's still occupied here. This quest is super involved, so I won't walk through the steps to heal all 4 of the wounded men, but I'll call out that this man, Thomas, has a gross compound leg fracture. Setting his leg now earns his help later, no questions asked, during a quest that is otherwise quite complicated. And to cure one of the sick men involves seeking out Father Simon to diagnose the cure, which, thanks to earlier efforts, only takes a quick round trip to speak to him in Ravna. With that, we've done all we can to help Johanka at Sasau, and she will be free to aid us later when we need her healing elsewhere. Then this next side quest is just a little treat for me. Jenda's been looking around our crap all game, and her library of goods could always be a little bit easier to manage with some extra saddlebag space. If we revisit Zola at Neuhof, it looks like they've been clawing their way back into the horse trade, but Sir Divish has already taken his horse buying business over to Merhoyed since he doesn't trust the quality of Neuhof's horses after the raid, especially with a woman in charge. Not my words. We're to convince Divish that he should resume purchasing horses from Zola as he always had, and to do that, we're gonna beat his riders in a horse race using a horse from Zola's farm. Thing is, I could not get this quest to work without glitching. I showed up at the right place and time riding Zola's horse, but Sir Divish called off the race, claiming that none of the riders ever showed up, despite them all being lined up right here. At least the fallback is for us to be considered the winner? I decided not to fight Destiny on this because this is a fine illustration of how janky this game can be. Especially in the late game when you've had more opportunities to affect the world state, quests can break easily, and it's best not to look a gift horse, if you will, in the mouth. The prize from Zola for regaining Divish's business is a noble saddle with 4 bags, the best in the game and the one that I had tried so hard to cheat from a horse at the very start of the game. And at some point in all of this, I bought Jenda a pretty blue and gold comparison to wear and match my coat. These do nothing, but they add some color and personality to your horse. I also wanted to get Henry some more time with Lady Stephanie before the game ends, just in case something should happen to either of us in the action. Her cousin is due to be married soon, and she would like our help gathering 3 gifts to execute the perfect wedding. The first is a horse from Ujits who will buck and throw its rider unless we learn how to sing to it. Tell Lady Stephanie the secret, and she'll insist that we sing for her too.
2 horses come roaming in the merry month of May, to graze in the shade of the apple tree there. The first one is brown and the second is grey. Which shall I ride to, my maiden so fair?
Her second demand is a crown that's being worked on by the craftsman in Sasau, except there's been a holdup. The Moldavite gem he's expecting for the crown never arrived. Tracking this down is a mini investigation that's actually pretty fun. The courier has been slain, but we reclaim the Moldavite from some bandits and allow the craftsman to complete the crown. The final item for Stephanie is a cask of the realm's finest wine, which of course can't just be sold to us. We need to win an archery contest for it, which I absolutely crushed. Except the game broke and I was told I lost the competition, so I had to reload and win it again. Then I took revenge on the archery master for making me reload. Screw this guy, I can afford the bounty. This is a better use of gold than most. With her 3 items fetched, Lady Stephanie is beyond grateful and she hands us a valuable shirt that belonged to her father. If we give in to her request that we try it on right now in front of her.
So long I yearned for young company. I really feel God heard my prayers and sent you to me.
I'm ready.
My, you do look handsome. As fine as any gentleman. When I was a little girl, there were always lots of other children around and young men and women of the court. It was so merry. I always hoped it would be like that when I was grown up too. But it was not God's plan.
You and Sir Divish had no children?
No. No, alas, we were not blessed. Twice I was with child, but they did not live. And now I fear there's no hope for me.
My lady. Oh, forgive me, my lady. I shouldn't have.
I don't mind.
Two hours pass. My man, this chest lock is not the only thing that's very hard in this chamber. So, having just cucked the man, let's ask Sir Divish for his help making a raid on the bandit camp. Right away, we're teleported to a morning time raid on Pribyslavitz. Now, mechanically, this raid is awkward, but it is a very cool set piece. The game cannot properly render a 50-on-50 battle, and that would be terribly unfun to play anyway, so what we get instead are a series of smaller skirmishes as we advance, broken up disruptively with long loading screens. It feels a bit like taking a series of fever naps, waking up for a brief moment in between to do a little bit of fighting before we pass out again. Eventually, Henry's able to corner Runt on the second floor of the church for a one-on-one fight.
I remember you, though. And where's my f***ing sword?
This is the single thing you could consider a boss fight in this game. Here's most of it.
Oh bad for a peasant brat.
Is It's not over yet, you scum. Now where's my sword? What have you done with it? Talk, you bastard!
I'll see you in hell.
Tell me, do you hear me? Tell me what you've done with it!
I'd say you're flogging a dead horse there.
We don't learn where our sword went, but the raid was a big success for the good guys. Except a huge chunk of coin was found, indicating this band is very well supported by someone rich and powerful. And as the player begins to have hope,
It's time for the next part of our plan. Give the word.
that man looks familiar. And that sword he carries. Okay, join the lords to debrief in Rattay. There's bad news already. 1. Bandits have attacked Merhoyed. The villagers actually held them off, but in their wake, a plague has taken root, and many in the town are seriously ill. 2. That chest of coin from Pribyslavitz is counterfeit. If the enemy is minting fake coins, they may have a near limitless supply. Hopefully, the sophistication of the work will make it easier to track down the mint, because not just anyone could possess the means to make coins that look this good. Forget the coins for a sec though, people are dying, so there's no time to waste getting to Merhoyed. This game is pretty fair about which quests are timed. They don't make it clear in the UI, but it follows logic. You can't sit on your hands if there's a plague happening. Our friend Matthew from Skalitz has been working here since the raid, and he fills us in on the plague. It began the day after the bandit raid. The animals got sick first and are mostly dead now, and the humans have started becoming sick too. The good news is the villagers captured one of the raiding bandits. But the bad news is that bandit too is sick with the plague, so we're going to need to cure the disease before we learn anything. Question the conscious sick to learn that the symptoms include intense thirst and stomach pain. We've also got to help one poor woman bury her husband, the first human victim of the plague. I haven't held a spade since my early game treasure hunting days. It's nice to come out of retirement and dig for the greater good. Then, we know Sasau as the center of medical knowledge in these lands, and we've lent them more than enough aid between Brother Nicodemus and Johanka. If we hadn't helped those two earlier, they'd have competing duties when we ask for their help now, but as it is, getting their help is straightforward. Brother Nicodemus checks the books and helps us diagnose that the plague symptoms add up to poisoning of the water supply. And the remedy to calm everyone's guts is simple enough for us to brew up thanks to our saddlebags full of herbs. Return to Merhoyed with Nicodemus and Johanka and distribute the cure among the sick, which is low-key frustrating to do because their houses are unmarked and scattered all around town. Finally, go cure the captured bandit raider and see what Ike Barinholtz has to say about the raid. We learn the bandits are being paid by the late Runt's boss, somebody called the Chief, who is a foreigner and likely a noble. And the counterfeit money is usually delivered by someone named Menhart, whom this guy is actually supposed to be meeting, right about now. For his help, this man only begs that we don't send him to be tortured, but that's Sir Radzig's call, not mine, so Henry takes him to jail. Report our curing of the plague and what we know about the money to Radzig. Then, before we go to meet Menhart, we're pulled aside. It seems like Radzig wants to tell us something, but he only manages to tell us that he's proud of us.
Good luck, son.
Son? Okay, Menhart. Well, he's been slain, but we catch up to one of his bodyguards who's wounded and hiding in a charcoal camp. But if our guys didn't attack Menhart's shipment, who did? That was done by some mystery knight dressed in red and bearing no sigil who flees when we accost him. His destination is simply the inn at Sasau, but do not fast travel there like I did because it broke my game. I'm not sure how fast travel works, but it might actually be rendering your travel somehow because I caught this knight somewhere in the woods during fast travel. I had to run away until combat broke, which was actually terrifying with how relentless and silent this dude is. Feels like an It Follows situation, or the Immortal Snail, except he's a super fast old guy. Once combat finally broke, seems like the old dude misplaced his horse because he just takes off jogging down the road on foot, not letting his years get the best of him. See what I mean about this game getting strange in the late game? Occurrences like this are not a fluke. I tail him all the way to the inn, where he sprints upstairs to his room that's right next to ours, doesn't bother closing the door, and casually strolls out to meet us 1 second later like nothing is wrong. He's willing to chat as long as we meet him by the pond at sunset, but he actually means to kill us when we show up there. It takes a tough speech check to convince him that we're not a bandit, but rather in the service of Sir Radzig Kobyla. He gives his name as Ulrich, but no more info. It's likely his lord would get in trouble if his activities in Bohemia could be traced back to him. Ulrich hands us a written confession detailing how the coins are made that we're to bring to Tobias Fayfar, who is Sir Radzig's engineer or accountant, some kind of very smart man. Tobias helps us fill in the blanks. The fake money is being laundered in Passau, which must be causing a problem for Ulrich's lord, which is why he's been sent here to stop it at its source. Tobias recognizes the handwriting and deduces that Ulrich must work for the Burgrave Henry III, a rival to our own King Wenceslas. And the use of quicksilver and the sophistication of the technique described convinces Tobias that the fake coins must be tied to Sasau. If we bring Tobias's input back to Ulrich, he reveals that the monastery would have a supply of quicksilver, and that the townsfolk are salty about a certain blacksmith who makes noise working all night. Let's follow the quicksilver lead first. Turns out the monastery uses quicksilver for their paints, but the last several shipments have gone missing. If we put pressure on their clerk, we learn he got threatened into selling those shipments to one Sir iykyk and his lackey Rapota. Then we can visit the KG Knight blacksmith, and through a side quest where we have to prove that his son is good at making armor, he reveals a similar story. He got coerced into forging sheets of copper for the same men, so he does that in secret at night. The extra coin helps with his ethical concerns, I'm sure. It is the engraver's apprentice who knows where we can find Rapota if we first save his bathmaid girlfriend from some kidnappers who are using her as leverage for his silence. Rapota wears a distinctive yellow hood, and we're told some places to look for him. As luck would have it, he's in the town square just now, and after chasing him down and tackling him, we force Rapota to reveal where the forgeries are being made. The materials from Sasau are brought to the mint inside an old silver mine at Skalitz to work with silver right at the source. If we report that location to Ulrich, he'll help us when it's time to go rumble. Their workshop is pretty heavily guarded, so having an ally helps for sure. I did the raid here with Ulrich's help and concluded the whole counterfeiting storyline only for the game to get stuck in perma-combat that I could not outdistance, outwait, fast travel, save by drinking schnapps, or speak to anyone to advance the quest and get an autosave to happen, so I had to reload my game, repeating a long chunk of gameplay, and Ulrich did not survive the raid the second time. Whatever. Anyway, the counterfeit workshop is shut down, iykyk is arrested, yada yada, we're back in rattay. iykyk will only speak to us, so we go question him now in his cell. We still need to learn who he's making the coins for. We're given the name Eric, but Eric still isn't the chief. We also learn how this mysterious bandit army is growing. They have crimps? I had to look that up, it's basically a recruiter. Crimps, who work out of Sasau, looking for men who need coin and do not ask questions. Report in to Radzig as usual, then it's back to Sasau to try and get recruited for the second time into this bandit army. It's a good thing we've stayed pretty anonymous. I feel like a bow-slinging madman wearing bright yellow might have caught some notoriety. Figuring out where to go next is a right challenge and a multi-step process, unless you fixed Thomas's broken leg. Dude owes us one, and he's more than happy to just go, oh yeah, no big deal, just go to the church at night when the light's on. Thank you, bud. I headed straight there, super drunk for laughs, and we're greeted by a very spooky dude with a risky assignment. Recall the fourth good gang member from the Neuhof raid that we never found, Pius? These nasty boys never managed to cut him down because he escaped their reach by joining the monastery as a novice monk. The monastery is super closed off to the outside world, so they need help infiltrating it to kill Pius. And, to make things more difficult, he's not even going by the same name anymore. So our job is to break into the monastery, determine the new identity of Pius, and assassinate him in order to join up with these dudes. This quest is an immersion break for me because, I mean, there's like 100 guys in their army. There's no way they all had to do a weird assassination mission as a prereq. But yeah, we have no other choice. And this begins the coolest, but also the most difficult and confusing quest in the game. The boring solution is, I think if your lockpicking skill is high enough, you can just bust in and snipe your target if you know the right monk to kill. The intended method, though, is to join the monastery as a monk and enter the cloister ourselves. But the monastery doesn't just admit anyone. First, we've got to locate a man, Carl, who's staying at the inn for a few final days of freedom before he enters the monastery. Knock out Carl and steal his letter of recommendation, then stash all of our goods away in storage, all of them. Entering the monastery takes everything we have, but they stick them in a less convenient spot, especially considering we might be making a hasty getaway. Once we're ready, meet Brother Porter and commit to a life of chastity, obedience, and poverty as we take our monastic vows. It's going to be real hard for the sequel to top these quests. Brother Antonius gives us a tour and explains the rules that will govern the rest of our lives here, and we do actually need to follow them while we're on this quest. Be up at 4 a.m., attend prayers on time, be in the right place all day, do our work, be at meals, observe bedtime. The correct way to handle this quest is to carefully gather info on each of the 4 new novice monks to figure out which one is pious without revealing why we want to know. Then we need a way to kill him, which is tough because all of our items have been taken away, and a way to escape after because this whole place is locked with very hard difficulty locks. Now you have some options here. You can try to hit up the right brother for lockpicks if you help him out first, or join some of the brothers drinking in the cellar at night to ingratiate yourself. I think there's some kind of forbidden book subplot you can pursue in the library also to help you learn about the novices. It's a really cool quest if you have the patience for it, with the limited free time that you get each day. I am not going to spoil which monk is pious or how I made my escape in case you end up wanting to solve this quest yourself. But since I do know the tricks, I simply slew Pius the first night once everyone was in bed. Make sure to grab his playing die after you kill him. It is not lootable while he's alive. Then book it out of the monastery. The guards cheat and magically know about your crime already, and they are busting down the doors to arrest Pius's killer, which I personally find cheap and unfun, but whatever, I'm gone. We retrieve our things and depart Sasau before the monastery even notices that their new monk is missing, and signal to the crimps that our task is done. The die we looted from Pius proves we killed him. At last, we're forwarded to the bandit headquarters, ready to be recruited for the second time this game. That is in Vranik, that old fort that we hunted for treasure around during our world tour. Then I did kill the crimps after getting the info I needed. It has worked out well for us so far. Report everything to Radzig, then I don't have reason to delay. It's back-to-back main quests until we end the game, baby. Enter Vranik and scout the fort, then head up the hill to meet their leader, Eric, director of the counterfeiting operation. I couldn't help but stab his horse on the way in just to make things harder for the bandits. Old habits die hard. The horse was named Old Habits. Head inside and...
I went to the fight master as you ordered, and I...
What's the matter? Lost your tongue?
I think I know what's troubling the young master. He's surprised to see me here. And the feeling's mutual.
This is Sir Istvan Toth, the mysterious chief. He recognizes us as Radzig's man, and we recognize him as the visiting noble from the very start of the game, whom Radzig hosted on the morning of the skalitz raid. We're knocked out and tied up for ransom, and we receive some interesting news.
My father's dead. That lackey of yours wouldn't even let me bury him.
He doesn't know, Eric. Nobody told him. He told me, a foreigner, but not him. How very inconsiderate. I'm sure you'd rather hear it under different circumstances and from someone else, boy. But beggars can't be choosers. Your father, your real father, is alive. You even know him. It's your liege lord, Radzig Kobyla.
Istvan also reveals that his funding does indeed come from Sigismund, and he believes that even united, the local lords don't have the manpower to beat his well-funded outlaw army. His personal motivations are clarified too. Apparently, lords fighting in Wenceslas' name previously pillaged Istvan's home country of Austria, so his operation here is not only a business opportunity, but revenge. Eventually, we're left alone to pass out, to be woken up later by Zbyszek, that rat from the start of the game who led Runt to us while we were trying to bury our parents. Zbyszek is in over his head here, and he wants out. He sees a potential cash reward in helping us escape. It's not a crazy gambit. He unties us, and we're free, but still naked. We can retrieve our stuff from Eric's cabin, then we have to sneak out over a weak low point in the palisade, which I totally botched, but eventually the game let me clamber through and run away. Meet up with Zbyszek in the forest, who helps us walk home on foot and recount everything we know to Radzig and Hanish. We know who our enemy is, where, and how many. The why is to destabilize Bohemia so that Sigismund can claim rule. With the odds mounting against us each day we wait, the allied lords decide that an attack on Vranik as early as possible is our best chance to defeat Istvan's bandit army. Oh, and I tell them Zbyszek deserves to hang because, He does. Then Radzig says we'll talk more about our relationship later, but for now, he'd prefer it if we called him Dadzig. Anything you want, anything the world has to offer, I can give you. Rush to tell Sir Divish the plan, and we're warped straight to the assault on Vranik. This goes a lot like Pribyslavitz, with the series of skirmishes, except there's no showdown at the end of this one. In fact, resistance is a lot less than expected, and our victory is short-lived because one captured bandit reveals that we've made a mistake by leaving Talmberg Castle unmanned.
Some nearby castle, left completely unguarded.
Halt! Who goes there? Greetings.
Lady Stephanie, I really don't think we should...
My lady, are gravely wounded. Without treatment, I'm afraid they won't live to see morning.
Not to worry. We'll take care of them.
My lady, you have my uttermost gratitude. May God reward you for your kindness.
Every Christian should help his neighbor in his hour of need.
True. Especially now, when treachery and deception surround us on all sides.
Get out of the way!
The devil lurks in the shadows.
Come on!
And one fears taking a guest into his house.
Oof. So Istvan Toth has Stephanie and Radzig captive inside Divish's castle, and we don't have much time before more of Sigismund's men come to crush us from behind. The plan is simple. We need to retrieve the hostages so that the castle can be attacked. We'll do that by sneaking in the black of night using a very long ladder. It's time for a stealth mission. Enter the one-time all-game where a Nighthawk potion makes a big difference. The nighttime looks beautiful like Sovngarde now. KCD has been doing a good job making sure all of our skills matter in the main quest at least once each. We've needed reading and lockpicking to do monastery content, hunting to feed the sick in Sasau, herbalism to brew the plague cure, stealth here. There's an alternate path in most situations, but they clearly intended for each skill to get a spotlight during some main quest, and that makes me feel better for spending time leveling them all up. Anyway, I quickly beef the stealth because that's never been a fun way for me to play games, and I get stuck in the armory under a stack of men so thick they can't even swing their weapons. So they don't. I'm getting jostled so much it takes forever to be allowed to swing my own sword, but after like 15 minutes I finally cut my way out of this dog pile mostly unhurt. Never change, Kingdom Come Deliverance. Looks like I was playing Hitman in here. The bodies are heaped on all 3 floors of this guardhouse. Honestly, 10 out of 10. Don't worry, our plan here fails even if you don't mess up the stealth, so our only remaining option is to lay siege to Talmberg, and Tobias Fafar is going to build us a trebuchet to do so. Mechanically, this is just one last hurrah for side quests while the trebuchet gets built. We've got to go around the world solving problems for Tobias, Divish, Bernard, and the camp quartermaster. It's a ton of filler fetch quests and nothing we haven't seen before. The men need meat, ale, some potions. The one quest that matters here is that Tobias doesn't feel confident in building a trebuchet alone, so we have to go recruit a siege engineer for him, Konrad Kieser, who's been exiled from Prague following some criticisms of Sigismund. Konrad's over in Sasau, overseeing construction at the monastery, so first we need to relieve him of that duty and recruit him to siege duty.
I thought you were urban. What do you want?
I knew I recognized that voice, but I wasn't sure from where. Turns out this is Brian Blessed, and I know him from everything. He's in so many games and movies, especially in the fantasy genre. First, to free him from obligations here, we have to forge a letter from the abbot saying it's okay for him to dip. Then, part 2, Konrad is suddenly afraid Sigismund had sent assassins after him, so he still won't come with us. Which is fair, Sigismund does send an assassin. Except I couldn't get the damn guy to come make an attempt on Konrad's life like he's supposed to for me to then come save him. Eventually I found the assassin sleeping like a baby at the inn and preemptively killed him myself just to get the quest going. My patience for janky quest is growing thin the more it happens, which, as you've seen, is quite a few times by now. So, having made the way safe, Konrad heads to camp and gets the trebuchet going, which takes several in-game days that we have to just wait. And they don't even give us a bed in camp. The one time I tried to borrow one, this employee of the month woke me up after 30 minutes to complain I was in his bed. Regardless, there's like 12 other free ones right around. So, with much salt, I just sat here running down the in-game clock, chugging wine for sustenance and cockerel potions for energy in place of sleep. By the time ready to lay siege, Henry's been awake for like 80 hours straight on non-stop energy drinks and liquor. Istvan's backup does make it here before we break into the castle though, so we get one final multi-stage battle protecting our trebuchet, and this one yields some luck for the good guys. We're able to capture Eric, and apparently Sir Divish has excellent gaydar because he immediately realizes that Eric and Istvan are lovers. I would never have guessed. Istvan refuses to exchange hostages though, so it's trebuchet time. They even let Henry pull the lever, which is nice. After a few days of bombardment, which is mercifully cutscened, we stick up some ladders and have one final battle to retake Talmberg. Except we vastly overpower them, and I barely get a chance to stab anyone. I do feel like we've gotten the same cutscene where the good guys are stabbing the one final surviving bad guy as uplifting horn music plays like 4 times by now. My man Sir Hanush yells up to the tiny little angry guy in the tower window, and I really enjoy the directing of this scene.
If you give me your word of honor that you will leave and never return, I promise you safe passage to the boundary of this fiefdom.
And Hanush's deal works. The worm Istvan Toth releases Lady Stephanie in exchange for Eric, and promises to also release Radzig once he reaches the border of the fiefdom. We still take off riding after them with Sir Hans, mostly just to make sure Radzig has a ride home once he's released because they steal his horse. But we do finally get to talking and unpack the whole I'm his bastard thing. Henry is relieved to know that there was scarcely foul play or any ill intention behind our abandonment. Radzig simply loved our mother and got her pregnant, but as a nobleman wasn't able to marry a commoner. Martin showed up, I guess, and was down to marry our mother and care for us both, giving everyone a cover story, and Radzig alleges that he always had an eye on us growing up too. Everyone was happy with the arrangement, and it means that Henry still has family even after losing 2 parents early on. After some kind words about our dad, credits roll, and we get the saddest scene of all time.
Come now. You know who sired you.
That doesn't matter now. I miss you, Amar. I miss you very much.
You'll be fine. We're proud of you.
For what? I let you down. I lost the sword. I let that bastard get away.
Don't be so hard on yourself. There was nothing you could have done to save us. And someone has to live and carry the torch. As for the sword, it's just a thing.
You didn't want me fighting. Now look at me.
Standing up to evil isn't the same as sowing its seeds. You did what was right. I have to leave you now.
Oh, please.
You know I can't stay.
Will I ever see you again?
God knows. Make her proud.
The pan over to Mom breaks me. This game is way too good, dude. And that's Kingdom Come Deliverance. Everything post-credits sets up the sequel, which is kind of a main point of making this video, so let's pay attention just a little longer. Margrave Jobst, cousin to both Sigismund and Wenceslas, is paying us a visit to see about ending the unrest in Bohemia. Now, Jobst was a Sigismund supporter until recently, but he feels the wind's changing and wants to help us throw our weight behind the rightful King Wenceslas. For all of his faults, there's still no better option to rule. Sigismund has made a proper mess of things in Bohemia, causing chaos with his pillaging, and he's losing popular support back home in Hungary too. He certainly can't keep both crowns, and it's no longer clear he can even manage either crown. But a big factor in whether Sigismund can be overthrown depends on whether the League of Lords, which is a group of powerful nobles, are on his side or not, and Jobst is still uncertain where they stand. So Sir Hans proposes simply asking. And there's our plot for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Henry and Hans are to ride off to seek one of the lords, Otto von Burgau, with a letter from the men in this room, and do a vibe check on where they stand on Wenceslas versus Sigismund. Overall, I think I had more fun going back to film KCD for this video than I actually had playing it for the first time. It's a game where familiarity helps a great deal. It's easier to understand the plot when you're not hearing every name for the first time, and it's more fun to play the game when you're not constantly running into new systems, some of which don't work great and have that learning curve get in the way of having fun. This game is so intensely information dense, and it has all these complicated historical politics. I made an effort to explain who people are and what's going on, but I probably got some things wrong, and I definitely omitted a ton of information just to keep this video a manageable length. It's pretty weird playing a historically accurate game with a cliffhanger. We know what happened, it's on Wikipedia, so I'm in this weird state of trying not to learn too much more about Czech history or pay attention to the dates listed next to people's names as I'm looking up facts for this script. Also, pretty much nothing happened. Sure, Skalitz got sacked, but the rest of the game was just not killing Istvan Toth and not repelling Sigismund. How about that delicious janky gameplay though? I personally really enjoyed the survival mechanics here. They're not that annoying if you buy into the world and take care of your needs together. Losing energy means that you'll want to make it to an inn for bedtime naturally, so while you're in town, that's a great time to repair your equipment, top up your beer supply, and sell your loot to free up capacity for tomorrow's adventure. Kingdom Come Deliverance was a great game for playing mindfully, and for me, the survival mechanics tie in really well to role-playing my character too. It feels healthy to play this game, if that makes any sense. Forcing me to break certain habits like never using consumables or rushing through dialogue only to rely on quest markers is a pleasant side effect of all the realism that Warhorse went for, and I appreciate the design. That didn't stop me from playing super cheesy too though, like grabbing all the treasure chests at the start of the game without their maps, abusing R1 spam to win combats, and brewing potions for 3 days until money never mattered again. It's funny to me that I have both playstyles contained within the same game because it's absurd, and I really love Kingdom Come Deliverance for that. The little moments that arose from JANK, like calling off the horse race with everyone ready to go at the starting line, or Ulrich ditching his horse and sprinting a mile cross country, were certainly endearing, though I was living in a constant low level of stress that something like that would break my save file. For such a tiny team, I think 10 or 12 in size, it's understandable that there were glitches. They packed so many mechanics and systems into this game, and I think I covered most of them. I know I left out the dice minigame because it's really easy and we didn't need to gamble for coin, and I know I didn't do justice to stealth or proper combat. But the food and energy system is pretty well done. Needing to learn to read and then practice reading is not something I've ever seen in a game before, and this is probably the best relationship I've ever had with in-game horse riding. I have heard that the team is aware the combat system was rough, so hopefully that's gotten a fair revamp in KCD 2, because it really is a bummer to have your combat be bad in an action RPG. Warhorse Studios are very open with development progress and behind the scenes for the sequel over on their YouTube channel, and I'm really excited to see them make the game they dreamed of with a proper budget and 25 times the manpower. I'll link them in the description if you want to go meet the devs. As for me, thank you so much for watching my video. If you made it here, you've already helped me so much with your watch time, and if you feel like I've earned a like, comment, or sub, I would be very appreciative. Thank you so much to my patrons as well. Y'all give me the support to keep going and make these long videos, even in the drier months, for views and ad revenue. Thank you very much, y'all. I literally don't know what videos are coming next. This has occupied all of my brain space for a few weeks, and I'm gonna need to reset first. If you want to help influence me, feel free to come yell 2010s single-player adventure game titles at me over in the Discord. But that's all I got for now. Peace out, Girl Scout.
Are you yanking my pizzle?